Public Q&A presents AskReddit question. What story had a terrible plot but great characters? Rocky Horror Picture Show. I have seen the movie multiple times, and I can't tell you what it's even about. It's all about the characters. An asshole and a slut stumble upon space aliens led by a sex-addicted sweet transvestite scientist building his newest vibrator. The procession is ruined by Meatloaf on Ice, the slut being horny, and Dr. Cripple. Mr. Hot Dog decides to fix this with a bisexual musical number, which goes south, when the other aliens turn on him, and throw Bowser's castle back to their home galaxy. The asshole and the slut are left naked on the floor. A man with no neck has been narrating this the entire time. The end. That tells me almost as much about the plot as watching the movie did. On the other hand, Meatloaf on Ice made me realize that the ice-capades haven't been a thing for quite a while now. Meatloaf on Ice is my drink of choice. An ignorant slut. Well, I like the music numbers too. Those characters are great at building up anti-C. Potty on. Say it, say it. Say it. The plot is basically Frankenstein with horny aliens. First Discworld novel. The plot of The Color of Magic is a wizard and a tourist bumble around the disc, and that's it. But despite that, the book is delightful, with the best character being the world itself. I was watching a Pratchett interview earlier, and when the guy asked about the shift in tone between earlier and later books, he said something like, "I discovered a wonderful thing called plot." That just sounds like quintessential Sir Terry. If I recall, Pratchett said that the series didn't really begin coming into its own until the 5th book, Sorcery. Before that, Discworld was fun, like a Mad Magazine-style parody of fantasy novels, but without the depth of satire of the later ones. Equal Rights 3 is reasonably deep. Terry Pratchett is one of my favorite writers, so I consider even his lesser novels, which I am definitely not saying Equal Rights is. I think it's wonderful to be a couple of steps above even the good work of other writers. Was never a fan of Rincewind and the luggage storylines. Death will always be my favorite. I feel like Mort is when the series really started to solidify, yeah, for books in, and it's solidifying. Pyramids and Thief of Time remain my favorite books. Small Gods is in a whole separate category of OMG. Favorite line of all of them though? Mort. No. I am a Vims man myself, but Death is a very close second. Who watches The Watchmen? I do. And who watches you? I do. Thief of Time is such an amazing piece of work. Also, How to Confuse the Ultimate Bureaucrat. Contradictory signs on the wall. Oh Lord, yes. I love the Discworld series and recommend it to everybody, but I tell them to skip the first 2 books. Their entire plot boils down to 2 feather. Oh, look at the pretty monster. Rincewind. Run away. Run away. I usually recommend starting with Guards. It's a great introduction to Ankh-Morpork, and an excellent standalone if they decide to not continue. Also, I love Sam Vims so much. Agreed. I always tell people to start with Guards and the Witches novels first. Pretty much every season of AHS I have seen has had good characters, but just an absolute shitshow of a story. I have only seen Apocalypse and Murder House. Apocalypse was laughably bad, except when it was trying to be funny, at which point it was actually a pretty good dark comedy. Murder House was amazing, but unintentionally hilarious. Every time a character died, it was like a scoreboard went up counting how many ghosts are in the house. And the Harmons just stumbled around clueless as to why their house seems like Grand Central Station all the time. I thought Murder House did pretty good except for the Ghost Breakfast Club and the Franken baby. Never made it to Apocalypse. I dove headfirst off of the ship about halfway through Freak Show. I made it to the scene where the killer clown is ostentatiously stabbing some guy with a pair of scissors. Could never understand why the ostensibly psychopathic kid who killed the Ghost Breakfast Club was sobbing and crying when they confronted him. He's evil. What does he care if they are super mad at him for killing them? The first half of Murder House was awesome, when everything was still mysterious. Then by about episode 8 you know who's alive, who's a ghost, who's evil, etc. At that point it just turns into a soap opera. Honestly, the first half of all the seasons are great. Then they just jump the fucking shark. It really seems like the showrunner starts filming episodes before he actually fleshes out what the season is about, and with only a vague idea of how it should end. Besides Asylum, that one mastered both. I mean, it did pull aliens out of its ass right at the end. Technically the aliens were hiding in its ass the whole time. Maybe the real aliens were the friends we made along the way. Jim Butcher, author of the Dresden Files, once got into an argument on an online writing forum about which was more important, plot or characters. The guy he was arguing with claimed a bad plot ruined a story, while Butcher countered that a story with good characters would still be enjoyable even with a bad plot. They made a bet. The other guy got to pick the dumbest plot he could think of, then Butcher had to write a short story that was still enjoyable. Not satisfied with picking a single dumb thing, the guy decided to combine two ideas. He made Butcher write a story that incorporated both the Lost Roman Legion and Pokemon. The result? A 6-book fantasy epic, Codex Hour warning, that page is full of spoilers. It's still one of my favorite series. The books are absolute delights, and true to form, are basically about what would happen if the Lost Roman Legion had been transported to an alien world where there are Pokemon for them to capture and command. I would argue that the challenge only provided the basic premise. The plot would be the events that unfolded, which the author had complete control over. What was the main conflict of the story, and who chose it? There have been many shows or books or movies with fantastic premises that don't meet expectations due to poor plot writing. However, I do agree with that good characters can carry a bad plot. Yeah, those are themes or inspiration more than actual plots. A plot would be something like the Lost Roman Legion has to stop Team Rocket from reviving Mutwo for their own nefarious deeds. Also, this guy picking lame plots has no idea what a bad plot is. Roman Legionnaires vs. Pokemon. That sounds awesome. Exactly. A bad plot would be a man needs to buy groceries but doesn't feel like it because he's busy watching poker on ESPN 8. A man needs to buy groceries but doesn't feel like it because he's busy watching poker on ESPN 8. Has fallen into the river in Lego City. In all seriousness though, a good writer could probably even turn that into an interesting story if they spent a lot of time exploring his psyche. The connections to Pokemon and the Lost Roman Legion are so thin that I didn't even know they were based off that until I saw this online. The Roman Legion I thought was pretty spot on. The Furies are more inspired by Pokemon than direct copies, and definitely get downplayed as the series progresses, but I love the origin story of the series too much not to share. The Roman Legion I thought was pretty spot on. The society was obviously based off of Roman society, but it wasn't until the very end that I recall there being anything suggesting their ancestors were actual Romans that somehow got transported there. Oh yeah, that's for them being the Lost Roman Legion is more a fun bit of backstory / justification for their society than it is an actual driving plot point. I think the Pokemon connection is more to do with elemental damage and specialties rather than the monsters themselves. In a sense, the Algerians themselves are the Pokemon. I mean, in the first book the Furies are presented as distinct entities with personalities and allegiances and whatnot. As the books progress, however, those elements fade to the back, and it just becomes people can do elemental magic. Right. Like, in the first book they are basically Pokemon. Bernard's Earth Fury even Earthcrafts Amara without him realizing. In the second book, Tavi says he's studying the philosophy of how some people believe the Furies only develop personalities if you give that to them. And that there's no settled knowledge on whether or not they have distinct personalities before. Then, in every other book, almost every Fury has no personality unless explicitly stated, and sometimes retroactively removed, with the exception of a few extremely powerful Furies. Still really fun book. One of my favorite series. I think he split the Pokemon angle into both Furies and the Mara. I agree with Butcher on this one. Characters are your or at least mine connection to the story. When none of the characters don't interest me in a story, I can't keep reading, regardless of the plot. Unless the plot is like, really awesome, but that's ultra rare anyway. Anyone who thinks plot is more important than characters hasn't watched enough movies, or read enough books. I would argue that in some cases the plot is more important since it is what conveys the idea the story represents. I am thinking of the type of science fiction that foremost is an exploration of a concept, or an idea, instead of an actual story. Like Asimov's Foundation series. The characters don't matter, I can't think of a single defining feature they had, I don't even remember a single name except one, and I don't remember anything else about that character except what he did. The characters in the series are completely flat, and that's kind of the point, because they don't really matter, what matters is what happens around them. I have to agree, but I think having good characters is a rule of thumb for any good story. There are most certainly exceptions to any rule, and what you mentioned is exactly that. Pretty much every porn ever. Yes, I was confused why someone in a bathtub would need being saved by a MILF lifeguard. I am not at the beach, lady, this is a bathtub. But every body of water needs a lifeguard. This scene, and this line in particular, is the best I have ever seen in a porn. The guy totally sells how confused he is by a lifeguard being in his bathroom. Also, why are lemons so valuable to those lemon-stealing whores? What do they do with them? Do they sustain themselves entirely off of a diet solely of lemons? I don't know, I lose my suspension of disbelief when that hot neighbor has to come over to use the shower again, even though that beefy plumber was just there to fix hers last episode. Oh, you must be here to fix the cable. Don't be fatuous, Jeffrey. Harry Potter and the Cursed Child. I loved Harry and Draco's Sons, but it was the worst, most god-awful plot I would ever read. I wish Albus and Scorpio got a better story. If it'd been posted to fanfiction net back in 07, it would have died with like a dozen reads. I don't know, I think it did pretty good under the My Immortal title back then. I don't know, at least My Immortal was hilariously bad. Not just bad. Can you preps stop being so mean to us goths? Hugs and kisses, love Inobi. Didn't it manage to predict one of the biggest plot twists of the series? Yup. And the time travel. What the hell are you doing here, you motherfuckers? Dumbledore asked calmly. J.K. Rowling wrote My Immortal. My friends and I once had a very long, drunk, late-night discussion where we argued that it might have actually been her oldest daughter. She would have been the right age, I think, and it would explain how the FIC managed to seemingly guess a lot of plot points before the books came out. We had some other arguments in favor of the theory, but this was years ago, so I don't recall much else. Every time I am reminded of CC, it absolutely blows my mind the fact it was greenlit at all. Aside from the book series and the original 8 movies, this whole franchise has been a masterclass from Rowling and WB on how to fuck up intellectual property and alienate fans. If the new HP game flops, I am done with it. The plot wouldn't be as bad, it would still suck if it didn't outright break every rule in the setting. How do you write something that ambitious without having any clue how the setting you're writing for works? Because it's shitty fanfiction that Rowling only canonized because it was transformative enough to probably skate through as fair use. It's one that I have to see exclusively for the stagecraft. Everything I have heard about the set, costuming, effects, etc. makes me need to see it, but it's so expensive and the plot is just not good. So my wife and I saw it, and the stagecraft is awesome. The highlight of the show for me. The stage effects, the set, etc. were just fantastic. The plot has major holes no doubt, but as a production it's very entertaining. I love the movie, but John Wick probably meets the criteria. The plot is paper thin. Theon Greyjoy kills a puppy and steals a car, and then Keanu goes on a rampage. But the characters are incredible. The world building is impressive, but it's all done through character interactions rather than being plot-driven. No one watches John Wick for the plot. It is as close to XKCD's pure action movie as we will ever get, and I love it. If I am remembering correctly, Shoot 'Em Up was basically that. Plus a carrot. Plus exposition on the nature of people who don't signal. Great movie. Pretty much. Hell, I have jokingly called it Proto-Wick when trying to convince people to watch it. Hardcore Henry is literally this. A few seconds of hasty exposition followed by essentially nothing but first-person Call of Duty-style action scenes. I would argue a simple plot doesn't necessarily mean a bad one. The premise is simple, and the plot sticks to that premise pretty closely. Badass's dog gets killed, so Badass goes on a rampage. It's simple, but it doesn't try to go beyond that simplicity, it just does what it is supposed to. Exactly my thoughts. Could you imagine if John Wick's plot devolved into some dime a dozen political commentary, when most of us just wanted a simple action movie? Lost. The entire show is nonsensical, but full of great, well-written characters that undergo significant arcs and development. The plot is, well, it's just the worst and ends up making no sense at all. You can tell there was no plan, no answers to most of the mystery, just writing new problems each season. Great acting and character development though. John Locke. That one scene where he's about to go on his walkabout to Australia, and his wheelchair gets in the way. Man, really well-written backstory. This is my destiny. I haven't watched that show in 15 years, but fuck, my heart just hurt remembering that bit. I always quote him whenever someone doubts me. Don't tell me what I can and can't do. Just tell me one or the other, please. Lost reminds me of Game of Thrones. Both shows kept introducing Chekhov's rifles constantly, with the understanding that all these MacGuffins would pay off later. Eventually, it became clear that the writers actually didn't know what to do with any of these loose ends, and that there was no overarching plan. Wow! You are still with us. Thanks for being such a nice person. As long as you are here, why not like this video and subscribe to our channel? Also, you can press the bell icon, so you won't miss any future uploads.